So the Montage M is now officially released, as are more specs about what this new keyboard synthesizer workstation can do. And welcome to part 2. Hopefully you watched to the end of part 1 and realised that the video was so long that I split it into 2. So let's get into part 2 without further ado. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. I said in last week's video that there is a new regime for effects on the Montage, and we really haven't seen any demos that have really, well, I haven't seen any demos that have really gone into sort of the whole virtual effect scenario. But what I have seen is the demonstrations so far have majored on this Leslie effect, or what they call the VCM Rotary Effect, that comes from the YC range of keyboards. And what they've basically showed you is how you can instigate this Leslie effect, this rotary effect, and how you can change the speed of the effect on the fly while you're playing. Now, most of them, what they've done is they've effectively mapped the effect to the ribbon controller, and by rubbing your finger from left to right, slow to or not off to fast, off, slow, fast, if you get my drift, you can change the speed of the Leslie effect. And it has actually a, it's actually very noticeable, but it happens all in real time. They've majored a lot on this one, but they haven't really majored a lot on anything else in the effect range. I suppose that's going to come as more demos are done on the Montage, as people start getting their hands on it. Here's a really interesting one. So if you've looked at the specs for the new Montage M, you will have noticed that it states the M6 and M7 do not have polyphonic aftertouch, but the M8 does because of this new GEX keyboard. Actually, that is completely true to a degree. And why do I say it's completely true to a degree? Well, actually, all three keyboards have the same software installed. There is no software differentiation between the M6, M7 and M8X. The difference is the keybed that is installed in those three machines. The M6 and the M7 have the same keybed as is in current Montage for those models. The M8 is a brand new keybed, and the M8 GEX keyboard supports polyphonic aftertouch, whereas the old keyboard that is in the M6 and M7 doesn't. But the software does. So you can actually, and this has been confirmed by Yamaha, you can actually run a MIDI source into your M6 or M7 that makes use of polyphonic aftertouch, and you should be able to use that function. But you can't play it on the keyboard of the machine that you're using if it doesn't have it. Again, I hope that makes sense. So you have it, you just can't use it if you buy an M6 or an M7 unless you start using it via MIDI. So we all know the new Montage has this new editing screen, or new screen that appears on the left hand side of the keyboard, where the editor controls were on the old Montage, but this now is a new LCD LED driven screen. It's not colour as far as I can see, but it does give you a lot of information, and it's what the demos have been majoring on in this area is the ability to change the FMX and ANX sounds through this screen on the fly while you're in performance mode. Effectively, the parameters for each tone that you want to edit are stored in a series of menu pages that is accessible from this screen, and then the rotary controls that sit underneath it allow you to basically modify the settings for whatever appears above them in the line on the screen on the page, if that makes any sense. So you can effectively change the attack, you can change the envelope, you can change the filters. All this stuff can be changed on the fly using this new editing screen that Yamaha have given you. I have to be honest and say I think it is absolutely a brilliant feature. You know, it's one of the reasons why I think the user interface on this particular keyboard is probably the best user interface I have yet seen on a flagship device. But that's what it's doing. And if you watch the demos with the people who are demoing it at the moment, they make a big thing about making these changes on the fly to your sound and then saving them back so you can actually use it as you're going. This is specifically for the M8x keyboard, and it may explain why this keyboard is 2 pounds or 1 kilo lighter than its previous version. The new GEX keybed is electrical sensors or electronic sensors as opposed to a mechanical contact scenario. So what does this mean? I don't know. I haven't seen the architecture of this beast yet. I saw it came up in one of the pieces of literature that's been released, and what they state is it allows the keyboard to be more sensitive to the way that a player plays it. So if you're heavy-handed, you can tone it down. Because it's not electromechanical, you actually, the way you turn it down is effectively you turn down the signal, you're not turning down the mechanical pieces, which is much harder to do. So if it's more electrical, you can turn it down easier. I think that's probably the easiest way to say it. But it is an electronic keyboard, not a mechanical keyboard, and therefore because it's electronic, I think that's where the 1 kilo of lightness has disappeared from. Probably more than 1 kilo of lightness, because if the other keyboards are slightly heavier, this was probably slightly heavier, and then you took out the keybed. But just to let you know, because it's an electronic keyboard, it's going to be is it going to be more of a bugger to maintain? Don't know the answer to that one. Only time will tell. The other thing that's come out this week is Yamaha have said they've changed the way the MIDI is implemented on the new Montage. But it wasn't clear exactly what they meant by the MIDI has changed. One of the things that has come out this week in some of the literature is the fact that they have changed the way performance parts are mapped to MIDI channels. So on your current Montage, the way performance parts are married to MIDI channel is part 1 is married to MIDI channel 1, part 2 is married to MIDI channel 2, and so forth and so on until you get to part 16. Okay, so if you wanted to play a part in the existing Montage, you had to send a MIDI signal in on that part channel. So if you wanted to play part 3, you had to send a MIDI signal in on channel 3, and only part 3 would play. If you wanted to play all of the parts, you had to send MIDI signals in on all of the channels. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, many Montage users have complained about this because it means that you don't get the full effect of the performance part if you're trying to control that via a DAW, for argument's sake, or an external sequencer of some description. So, what they have done in the new Montage is they have effectively allowed you to map a part to a MIDI channel and allow that part to effectively listen on that MIDI channel. So if you had 5 parts in a performance and you wanted them to all play together, you can map all 5 parts to a single MIDI channel and receive the MIDI data that would trigger the performance. The downside to this is the way they've done that is by disabling keybed control. So you can't actually play the performance on the keybed, it has to be played via MIDI to take advantage of that functionality. And I'm going to probably leave it at that point because I wrote a bunch of other stuff down and then I've gone back and thought about what I think I've misinterpreted it. But effectively, what parts of performance are not mapped via keyboard control, they will all map then to the default MIDI channel. And that's what I've written down. I'm not sure that is correct, but that's what I've written down. So there you go. You can kind of take that second part with a bit of a pinch of salt, because I'm still waiting for more details to come out of that. I do know somebody who's going to go and buy a Montage 2 or a Montage M, so I'm kind of hoping that I might get round to their place and play it before too long. And late news to this mailbag section, because I only picked this up last night. The Montage M will become a VST. What does that mean? Well, Yamaha have said that they will be releasing a VST version of the Yamaha Montage early in 2024, which is next year to you and I from the point of recording this. And with that VST, you will be able to load and manipulate the tones in the VST, and then you should be able to ship those tones back to your keyboard. So you can do all your tonal editing and listen to those tones and play them on your VST through whatever system you have set up on your computer, and then you should be able to take those tones and move them back into your performance to play on the keyboard itself, while you're obviously using it in a live or a studio situation. What Yamaha have said is if you own a Montage M, you will get this facility for free. If you don't own a Montage M, guess what? Get the readies out, because it will be a chargeable piece of software, and I don't expect it to be particularly cheap, because why would you give away the crown jewels to your synthesizer cheaply so people don't go and buy the hardware? That kind of seems a little bit nuts. So I think the software will probably be quite expensive to encourage you to buy the hardware. But that's all I know about that. That's breaking news as of last night. I saw it, I think I know. Tell a lie. I think I saw it on Friday night, and I actually researched it last night. But that's the latest piece of news to come from Yamaha on Montage M. So what are my views now? I know a little bit more about the Montage M. I'm still reserving full judgment until I get to play it. I have had quite a conversation with a couple of people who currently own Montages, and a couple of them own other keyboards as well, in terms of Phantoms and Kronos, and all of them have said they prefer the Montage keyboard to the keyboards on the others. Now, I prefer the Kronos keyboard. I like the Kronos keyboard, but it's not my favourite keyboard. In fact, I think the Oasis is the better action from the Korg range, if I'm honest. But that's me. I'm not a gigging, living musician. I don't owe my money through this. And people who earn money through gigging and playing often have very different views about keyboards than maybe I do. So I just kind of take that on board. What I do think Yamaha seem to be homing in on, though, is I think Yamaha are homing in on the user interface. What I have seen about the user interface is somebody has thought about it. They've thought about, if you are a giggy musician and you're standing there playing in an evening session, how do you get from A to B quickly? They've thought about that. They thought about how do you need to edit you're in a venue and you've got various acoustics going on. How do you edit your sound to make advantage of the acoustics? How do you turn the reverb down because the venue has reverb? Those sort of things. They've really thought about how do you do that quickly on this keyboard. And from what I've seen through the demos, that seems to come across quite well. As I said, I reserve judgment on this. But this new keyboard, although it is expensive, and I say that unreservedly, I think it is expensive, I think it could become the new benchmark in user interface. And on that note, I'm going to say live long and prosper, and see you later. Bye bye.